the unlocking of creative ideas. Your best ideas right now, I'm talking about legacy, the work for which you will be remembered, is currently locked up and inaccessible to you as you push forward. You've got to take that step back and reflect and unlock these ideas.
Welcome to Flip Your Script, the podcast about life's critical turning points and how people find the inspiration and motivation to move forward and rewrite their unique stories. Flip Your Script is produced by Media Minefield, a public relations firm passionate about the power of sharing stories. Specializing in earned and social media, Media Minefield helps clients take control of their unique story and message. The show is hosted by Kristi Peel, founder and CEO of Media Minefield, who flipped her script from an Emmy-winning journalist to a successful entrepreneur and speaker.
Today's Flip Your Script podcast is pretty unusual, and I suspect it will cause everyone to push their own thinking about the benefit of taking time off. Sean McCabe is a recovering workaholic, currently documenting a 1-year-long sabbatical. Let me say it again, a 1-year-long sabbatical. His big mental flip your script moment came when he realized all his friends were on his payroll, even his wife. Sean, thanks for joining me today on the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, it's such an interesting topic, and I'm really interested for reasons that I'll talk about after I hear more about your story. So I want to start at the beginning. So you're working, tell us a little bit about what you were doing and when you realized that things had gotten out of hand for you with work-life balance, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, I've always been an all on or all off type of a person. It's just like a light switch. I don't know how to slow down or do something to a lesser degree. I just apply myself fully. And I enjoy my work. And so I never really thought of it as a problem because I was in a fortunate position where I controlled my schedule. I was running my own business and I could do whatever I wanted. And so what I wanted to do was work because I was excited about it, but my health wasn't good. I was sitting all day long. I wasn't exercising, hardly going outside. I wasn't spending enough time with my wife. And, my relationships were just falling by the wayside. And it wasn't until I kind of hit this breaking point in my business where things weren't really working well. I was just working hard. On a scale of 1 to 10, I was just at an 11 all of the time, just going. I had a team of 8 people on payroll, and I'm thinking they need to pay for food to put on the table, to take care of their kids. And so even though things weren't working well in the business, I was taking it all on myself and pushing myself really hard to do things to make money, to be able to meet that payroll, to take care of people. And so it took several years to realize this isn't working. Had I taken a step back and reflected more often on a more frequent basis, I would have realized that it's doing everyone a disservice to keep pushing forward, even though I'm thinking, I need to take care of them. I need to make sure they don't lose their jobs. I don't want to let anyone go. Really, I should have let them go a long time ago.
And you talked about something that I think in talking to people who aren't from America, this is really an American mindset, which is, how I'm going to fix this? I'm going to work harder. I'm just going to work more hours. I'm going to work longer. I'm going to work harder. And gosh darn it, it's going to get better. And you found that isn't actually true.
It wasn't in my case. No. I found that working really hard on the wrong things just takes me faster to a place I don't want to go. And if I don't take a step back and evaluate, am I heading in the right direction? Am I working on the things that I really should be working on? Then all of that hard work ends up getting wasted. I still believe in having a good work ethic and really applying yourself, but we need to apply ourselves to the right things. And what is work-life balance? What does that look like? Is there such a thing? The way I define workaholism is you're not spending time on the things you know that you should be spending time on. And that lets you define that for yourself. It could be your health. It could be exercise. It could be sleep. It could be spending time with your family and your loved ones, the things that you feel like I really should be doing these things and I'm not, that's workaholism. And even if you love your work, even if you're enjoying it and you don't feel like it's a problem, if it's taking you away from the things that you feel like you should be doing, then it's a problem.
There's something that gets tied up with people who are type A specifically, and maybe it's only because I can recognize and relate to a lot of what you're saying. And it's really this concept that I have to keep working, I have to keep doing it. And it's so hard to be able to recognize that there are other people who actually do things better than I do. I have to take some time away from the work and think about, what do I do that's better than anyone else can do? And then what do other people do better than me? And be comfortable passing some things off. But that's a really hard thing for a lot of folks to do. Was that your experience as well?
I definitely had superhero syndrome because I just thought I'm the best person to do all the things because I care the most and I'll work the hardest. And it's so terrible because it robs you. Like, other people, if you gave them the chance to do one of the 20 things you're doing right now yourself, they can not only get to the point where they do it as well as you, but they can even surpass you. They can even do better than you because that's their one area that they get to focus on. They don't have the 20 other things like you do. And it's such a beautiful thing to build a team of people who each get to focus on their area of specialty. You get to work together instead of trying to take all of that on yourself. And so what I've tried to do is delegate everything but voice and vision. So even the things that I like doing, even the things that I want to do, those are really the hardest because it's easy to delegate the things that you don't like doing or you're not good at. But the things that you are good at doing and you like doing, but you shouldn't be doing, those are the hard ones to give up. And so my litmus test is this something related to voice or something related to vision? Otherwise, I should delegate it. And even within voice, that doesn't mean you can't have writers and other people helping you with that. But I'm talking about your core message and your core vision. Like, where is it that we're going? Ideally, that's where you want to be. And if those are the highest value, highest leverage points for you as, say, a business owner or someone who's running something, it stands to reason, this is my thinking process, that we should create time for ourselves to really think about these things, time and space to step back and reflect. If these are the highest value, highest leverage things, we need space to reflect on those things. And that's where this sabbatical idea came for me. Was I needed some way to take a break, but I didn't know how to slow down. I needed like an on or off button. Like, I'm just going to be completely on break. What does that look like? And I came across this sabbatical concept, which traditionally is more of a academic thing where someone would take off a seventh year. And I thought it was really intriguing, but I needed something smaller scale because I'm like, I'm not ready for that. I need something now. And as a play on numbers, I thought, well, that's 7 years and there's 7 days in a week. What if I go in between and just take off every seventh week, where I would work for 6 weeks and then take a week off? And so I started doing this as an experiment back in 2014. And it was a game changer. It was so huge for me because it freed me up. Because when it was on me to like, hey, slow down, you're working too hard, you're working too much, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle that. But when I looked at my calendar and it told me, hey, in a week, we don't have any problem taking time off to go on our vacation that we planned. And so I look at the calendar, it's like, I've got a sabbatical week coming up. Okay, I guess I better get my work done and then have that sabbatical. That freed me up. It was no longer on me to slow myself down. I just outsourced that to the calendar.
We're talking specifically about work. And I think so many professionals, especially entrepreneurs, business owners, high-level folks, get really caught up with their identity being connected to their work. And I have a lot of friends who are stay-at-home parents, and it can be similar, even though the voice vision concept is different because you can't, like, hey, kids, feed yourself. I'm taking, a week off. But I do feel like this concept relates to everyone wherever they get their identity, because there are people who have said, I can't even have a date night. And really, I mean, how important is if you're in a marriage relationship, to children? So I think in general, even though we're talking about professional things, this concept relates in all parts of life, because we're all better when we can take a little step back and get some rest and get some reflection and focus on things that in the busyness and the task-oriented way we all work every day, we don't have the space to see. So I think that the concept is so brilliant and can be related to all sorts of different aspects and different roles. And people who are tired need sabbatical. All types of people need a break. There are students, there are, folks who are just grinding, and it impacts health, which you talked about as well. So all that to say, I reached out to you because I have about 7 months ago said, my company just turned 10 years old in September, and at our 5-year point, everyone in the company, when they hit 5 years, gets money to go have an experience. And the only caveat is you need to be willing to come back and tell everyone what you did. So that's it. So for tenure, I wanted to ante up, and I've spent a lot of time researching what are things that people who are really, if you've been with the company 10 years, you're probably at a high enough level that you're really all in. So what do those people need? And it was this concept of sabbatical, which, as you know, goes back as a biblical concept. You see it a lot in academics, you see it in churches, you see it in universities. But this concept of taking this 7th year, as you talked about, off. So the way that we're going to implement that is that when this podcast airs, I will be in the middle of a month-long sabbatical. And I started Googling, sabbatical experts. And outside of academia and churches, you're pretty much the only one I found, which kind of was surprising to me because there's so much data that this works. Why aren't more people talking about it? So why do you think that is? Why aren't more people doing this and talking about it?
Wow. I mean, the most common thing that I hear is it seems like a luxury. Who can afford to do that? Who could do that? And so it's difficult to kind of convey that this is possible for really anyone. And you had mentioned that if someone's not necessarily an entrepreneur, maybe they're working from home and they've got kids, there's still some things you can do. You could take a weekend sabbatical, just the last weekend of the month. All you do is you don't have to go to a cabin or anything like that. It's just clear the calendar. Just put a little event on those 2 days that says sabbatical weekend, and don't schedule anything. You'll be surprised at how difficult that is at first, because we just tend to fill time. I got a weekend coming up. I'll do this, I'll do that. Just try carving out some space where you don't schedule anything. You open it up to pure possibility, freedom from obligations. That's the one thing that I found is key. When I started doing these sabbaticals back in 2014, it took me a couple years to really figure out, because I was expecting to be super recharged and super energized, and I wasn't. I came out of these and I wasn't feeling that super recharged energy, and I couldn't figure out why. And I realized it took me 2 years of doing this. It was because I was treating the sabbatical as free time. And it's very similar, but there's an important difference. There's an important distinction, which is that free time we tend to fill. A sabbatical is an event in and of itself. It's the presence of an event on your calendar. It's not the absence of an event. So what you wouldn't want to do is just, try to not schedule anything on this week. No, what you want to do is schedule a week, or in your case, a month, where you literally put an event that spans 30 days across your calendar, all the weeks, that says sabbatical. And this is my suggestion. It's not like you have to do this, but what I found is this is very helpful. The only rule I have for myself is don't schedule anything. And when I say that, people immediately think, oh, so I'm just going to sit and stare at a blank wall the whole time? And I say, no, you don't have to just sit there. It's that you're opening yourself up to possibility so that you can say yes to anything in the moment. And that is the difference between this giving you energy and taking energy from you. Because, what is work? Is writing work? Is painting work? Is, anything can be work, right? But it's also something that you could do because you enjoy it. So what is the difference? Well, I found the difference is when you have to do something, it takes energy from you. When you choose to do something, it gives you energy. And what's interesting is those two things can be one and the same. If your work involves writing and you have to finish this report by the deadline, it takes energy. But if you enjoy writing and you choose to write a blog post or an essay or something that you're passionate about, somehow it gives you energy. But if someone were to peek in your office, it looks like you're doing the same exact thing. And so instead of scheduling things for your sabbatical, which past you will think, future me is going to love this. Because why else would you schedule it? I want to do an interview. I want to do a coffee with a friend. I want to go to this event. Then what happens is when you get there, a lot of times, because I believe we're chronically burnt out as a society and we just don't realize it. We just kind of operate on this low level burnout. What happens is you get to this sabbatical and all you want to do is rest, because suddenly you realized you didn't know how much you needed rest until you gave yourself the opportunity to rest. And now that you're here, you're like, I needed this more than I realized. Yet you've got this week full, this agenda full of all of these things that past you thought would be wonderful for future you to do. And then it ends up taking all of your energy. So for 2 years, I was doing these sabbaticals that took energy from me and I couldn't figure it out. So once I, to use your language, once I flipped the script there, that changed everything for me. And so then I went in with pure possibility. This could be anything. And that's kind of scary for some people, not knowing. It's not planned. What could this be? I don't know what it's going to be, but it's a trusting thing. Like, I'm going to trust that this is going to be good. It's going to be restful. And then you're there and you get a call from someone and they say, hey, do you want to have coffee? You want to do this? You want to do that? And you're like, you know what? Yeah, I do. And then it actually gives you energy.
It's the difference between I get to and I have to. And there's a big difference in the mindset. That's so interesting. So in thinking about your own experience, what has surprised you the most about you as a human being, your marriage, perhaps your relationships, now that you're comfortable with sabbatical and you're in the middle of this year-long sabbatical, what has surprised you the most?
I think what I've found surprising, and I think I don't like it because, like I've said, I'm a recovering workaholic, is just how much I need rest. So when I think of a sabbatical, I think, okay, here's a bunch of time. I am going to get so much done. And then you get there and it's like, I kind of just want to sit here. I kind of want to think. I want to go on a walk. I want to watch a documentary. I want to read a book. And there's this little part of you that feels a little bit guilty. Maybe that's just me because I'm a workaholic or something, but like it just feels a little bit guilty. And so it's very difficult to get guilt-free free time. And I think it's even more difficult when you feel like you're stealing it away, right? Like, oh, I need to find some time. I need to slow down. And so what I found to be super helpful is when this is a scheduled, recurring thing, it kind of takes the burden off of me. It's like, oh, it's not me. The schedule says it's time for a sabbatical. So I'm just going to receive this gift. But I think the most surprising thing for me was just going into these and actually needing the rest and not getting that productive output that I thought I was going to get.
In telling people that I'm going to do this, they think that I'm crazy. And here's what I get a lot from people. Wow, that is so smart. Good for you. I could never do it. And when I, really got my head around, okay, this anniversary date's coming up. Like, I told everyone in the company they're going to do this. Like, I have to do it first and I have to do it well. I can't be, oh yeah, I'm off for a month, but you're going to see me sending you emails the whole time. That's really setting a bad example. So there's a little bit of pressure that I do it well so that I actually do what I say, because that's a core value. That's how I live my life. So I've been fascinated by all the people who say, and I would say pretty much to a fault, everyone has said, I wish I could do that. And the reality is everyone who said that, they can. They're just choosing not to. Do you think that's fear? What do you think that's about? Because you must get the same thing, especially when you started.
Well, of course it's fear. Like it's fear of the unknown. And it's scary doing this the first time. It's scary doing it the third time, really. I think it took 3 sabbaticals for it to click for me. The first two felt really awkward. Like the first one kind of felt like a vacation a little bit because that's the closest reference point we have. And then the second one felt wrong. Like, no, I really should be working. And then the third one, it kind of clicked. Like you kind of get into the rhythm a little bit. Like, yeah, this is good. I understand this. But going into it, you don't know what to expect. And it's like, how could I take a month off? You asked earlier what was surprising to me. Another thing I realized was surprising is just how short amount of time that is. It's crazy how large it feels before you've done it. Even when I was doing week-long sabbaticals, I'm like, okay, week-long sabbatical, here we go. All right, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to go hiking. And it's like, I make this huge list because it feels like so long. Oh, I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to take a month off. And it goes by like that. So it's that when you haven't done it, it sounds so huge. So someone else, oh, wow, taking a month off. It's really not a lot of time.
And you're on a mission to get this concept implemented into more people's lives. How's that going? And does it feel daunting to have more people in the business world on board with this concept?
It does definitely feel daunting for me. I've set a mission to really spread this because I feel like not only are we chronically burnt out, so there's two sides to this. There's solving the problem of burnout, preventing burnout really, because once you're burned out, you have to recover from burnout. And sometimes that can take years. Sometimes you lose your passion for the thing and it doesn't come back. And I so desperately don't want that for people. So burnout prevention is huge for me. But then the other side is the unlocking of creative ideas. Your best ideas right now, I'm talking about legacy, the work for which you will be remembered, is currently locked up and inaccessible to you as you push forward. You've got to take that step back and reflect and unlock these ideas. The kinds of ideas I get on my sabbaticals quantifiably have been worth, this one's worth 30,000. This was worth 25,000 in 24 hours. This was worth $100,000. Just boom, an idea. It doesn't happen like that when you're just pushing. So, I mean, I can say quantifiably, the ROI is huge. It's tremendous. But until you've done it, until you've trusted the process and created that space for yourself, it's really hard to imagine. So it is definitely an uphill battle for me in trying to get people on board, companies on board. But wow, it is so beautiful when you give an employee of yours a sabbatical and they take that album that they've been working on producing as a musician for the past 7 years and they finish it in that time. And they go on that trip and they write that book. It's so incredible. It feels great, obviously, for you, but it feels great for them. But even better, from a business perspective, what you're doing is creating stories. So you're creating these stories that you could even share publicly. Like, this is what our employees have done on their sabbatical. So it's a culture thing. I think it is a differentiating point between you and, let's say, other similar agencies, right? If a business is looking to hire one company versus another, and they're otherwise identical, but one gives their employees these sabbaticals and they tell these stories, well, people know that happy people do better work. So I think it's also a competitive advantage, and certainly it would attract talent as well.
All those things you said, I sure hope so. I believe that. And this is what's like in my heart and my head, I believe that. But to go do it. And also, I know I'm an idea person all the time. So I think my team, who probably is listening to this because they haven't heard my voice and, however many weeks I've been off by the time this comes out, they're probably like, oh no, think of the idea she's going to come back with if she's had space in her brain for, a month. I'm really excited about it. And I was very afraid, a group of entrepreneur friends of mine had to talk me into it because I was like, well, what if I just like hid my email and people didn't know that I was emailing? Or what if I was emailing and then, someone else in the company was sending it out from them and they were like, what are you talking about? No, take the time. You can only learn things about yourself. You can only learn things about the company. You can only learn things about what needs to be unlocked in your brain, to use your language, if you're completely out. So I'm on board with that concept. And for me, I wanted to make kind of a theme. So my theme, which you didn't know you said it, but you basically said it's the right kind of theme, which is month of moments. So my goal is every day to say yes to something that I normally wouldn't have the space to say yes to, and to document the moments. So I want to come out of this with a story, and we're doing it video as well. Someone told me about an app that we're going to do this so that every day I'm documenting the moments, because there are so many moments that I miss because I'm working. And I'm really excited just to see what that is. I don't even know. Is that a nap? Is that a walk? Is it coffee with a friend? Is it taking my dog to the dog park? I don't know, because I don't have that kind of time.
It totally fits the spirit of sabbatical, which is just that spontaneity, that freedom from obligations, just doing things in the moment. It's so wonderful, and I would just encourage you to keep that space. Try as much as possible not to fill it, but just go into it. Go into the openness of the day and experience the possibility. Just whatever comes, say yes to whatever comes. I think that's going to be so great for you.
I'm excited. But, going into sabbatical, any of us who go on vacation, like the days leading up to vacation are filled. And the days leading up to the sabbatical are filled. I mean, to the point of, I didn't even know that I could work like this. So I do think that, to your point earlier about when you had the 6 weeks and the 1 week, you get all the things done in the 6 weeks that you probably could have done in the normal 8 weeks, because you get it all done so you can have that freedom. And there's just a beauty in having an open calendar, which is so foreign for people who work, people who don't work, people who have kids, people who don't have kids. The concept of an open calendar, we just don't do well.
Yeah. It's amazing how much you can get done when you have clarity and focus. And you're excited to do this sabbatical, take this sabbatical, and that focuses you in the meantime. And so what I love so much about the idea of a recurring sabbatical is it creates these cycles. It creates these kind of focused sprints. Like, okay, we have this period of time between now and the next sabbatical that we're going to take, which just kind of makes these focused periods where you kind of ask yourself, okay, what are we going to get done in this amount of time? As opposed to another day comes along, another day, and we're just trotting along.
And you're on this year-long sabbatical. How far in are you, and what are you realizing about this much time that's different about the week-long sabbatical?
It's a strange year for sure, because we started this at the beginning of 2020 in the United States before the pandemic. So we had, you don't have to travel on your sabbatical. You can certainly do one at home, but I've always wanted to travel. And so we were going to do a year of travel, just traveling around the world. And we actually moved out of our house. So we didn't have a house or a car. We just had backpacks, and we started traveling. And it was great. We were having a great time going from city to city. We were spending about 2 weeks in each place, just really getting a feel for the place. And, we got a little bit into the year, and then the travel aspect kind of came to a halt with the pandemic. And it was kind of a weird situation, because we were sitting in Airbnbs for months on end and trying to evaluate, because it was such a big question mark. It still is a question mark of like, what is this going to look like? When is it going to change? And we came to the conclusion that we're probably not going to be traveling the world anytime soon, certainly not in the next couple of months. And so we actually decided, you know what, we're going to settle down. We actually settled back down into a house during the sabbatical year. And so, set back up, and I was running during this time just because I like to run for exercise, but I was on a call with a friend, just kind of one of those spontaneous calls. And he said, "So when are you going to run a marathon?" And I laughed and I said, "Well, at some point, someday, that's a goal of mine." And he's like, "Get it on the calendar." And I was like, "Wow, okay." And he said, I'll train with you. And I said, "All right, like I'll train." And this was, before the pandemic, and it ended up getting canceled. But because I was running every day, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to run it myself. And so I ran the marathon on my own, without all the tables and the banners and the people cheering. I did it, but it felt great, And so it's just going with the moment. And people have asked me, "Are you really disappointed that you've been planning this sabbatical year for 4 years and then there's a pandemic and you weren't able to travel the world?" And I said, maybe it's because of my wife's health issues last year and thinking there's a good chance she's not going to make it. And the fact that she's still here today, maybe it's other things, but like, I just feel such gratitude for this opportunity. Like everything, I just feel like life is so precious. It's just, everything is a gift. And so this opportunity to travel the world was just a gift. Like I have the people that I love in my life and they're alive and they're well. And so I'm so surrendered to the moment and just being here that I wasn't disappointed. It's like, okay, great. This next season is we're settling down into a house in a new place in Boise, Idaho. And, I can run down by the water and we can go on walks and, I can write and I can do whatever. And so I'm just surrendered to it. And I have to say it feels great.
Congratulations for a lot of different things. But the marathon is interesting as well because it's the same concept as putting something on the calendar and not, in that you decided to do it for you. Not you decided to do it because you have to do it and you have to get this time, and it becomes a get to rather than a have to. And even though you ran the same amount of miles, the mindset around that is different. So that's fascinating. Have you found that this concept of searching for possibility that you do during your sabbatical, does that stay with you and change you when you do go back to work, that your just mind changes enough to be open to some things because you realize the benefit of it? Or when you go back to work, are you like right back in?
I think when I go back to work, I'm right back in. But what I take away is an increased ability to be present in the moment. So what's actually very difficult, and for some reason it doesn't seem to translate well from like the ability to focus in work to the ability to focus in a sabbatical on being present in the moment. It takes practice, it takes effort, and it's more difficult than you might imagine. But over time, as you get accustomed to it, I just feel so much more present. Like when I am working, I am working. When I'm off, I'm with my wife. When I'm on this call, I'm talking with you. When I'm on sabbatical, I'm embracing the moment. That's been the biggest thing for me.
People who are hearing this may be thinking, what does this guy do that he can take a year off? How's he really going to get this story of sabbatical out longer? So can you talk a little bit about what your work is and some of the things you're working on to spread the message of sabbatical?
Sure. So I'm an artist, but I came into the art world through business. And I was making really good money as an artist, working with big companies and magazines and advertising campaigns. But the biggest question I was getting was, how was I doing what I did? And so I started teaching how I was able to work with clients and write contracts and price my services. So I was able to help a lot of other creative people in different fields, in a lot of cases, quit their day job and go full time with their art or their photography or their filmmaking or whatever it was. And so as much as I enjoyed art, for me, that was hand lettering, drawing custom letters. So, like Coca-Cola is like a custom logo type. It's not a font. I would do custom logos and drawings and things like that for clients. And as much as I loved doing that, what I think I found through hand lettering was that I had a voice and I had a message. And while hand lettering created something beautiful that showed, a few words in a phrase, I was frustrated with how long it took to make because I was more interested in communicating the message. So I'd spend 4 hours communicating 4 words, but I felt like I had so much more to say. So I started podcasting, I started writing, I started making videos. And I ended up, as much as I loved art, I ended up finding even more fulfillment in helping other creative people make a living from what they really enjoyed doing. And not just like the cliche phrases like, yeah, do what you love, pursue your passion. But I'm a really tactical guy. I like to get super practical. Here's how to get great clients. Here's the questions to ask them. This is how to price your services, how to create processes. So just getting really tangible with people, giving them clarity. And what I do now today is I run a business community for creative professionals. We have a lot of business training for them, but also office hours and answering questions, things like that. And then more recently, the services arm of our business, we run a digital media agency where we work with clients who we turn your weekly show into daily content. So they want to be more present on social media, post more often, but they don't feel like they have the time to post every single day. We help them. All they have to do is show up once a week, send us that recording, and we turn that into daily clips. So those are kind of a couple of things that we have going on.
And you're able to do that, then put it on hold, have other people working on it, and then step back into that.
Yes, it took me a long time to get to that point because I thought all along I was building businesses. And I realized many years in that I was just creating customized jobs for myself with my logo. Meaning the business ran when I worked in it and it didn't when I didn't. And so I realized I don't have a business here. I just have a job. I just created a fancy job for myself. I should create a business because a business is an asset. It runs automatically without you. And I realized I need to make this. And so in fact, in the year leading up to my sabbatical year, I trained my right-hand guy to do everything in my absence. And so I imbued him with total, control. He can do everything. And I spent a lot of time over that year explaining the reasons why I made the decisions that I did, what went into it, what were the principles that drove those decisions. So he felt empowered to act on my behalf. And then I was completely freed up. So it's beautiful because the sabbatical forced me to make something that ran without me. And that was actually something that I didn't have for a long time.
And so valuable. If you ever wanted to sell your company and you can show to an investor or to the person who wants to buy it, here's my P&L without me in it. You don't need me, and look at how well this runs. That's so valuable. Not the reason you're doing it, but an added bonus, I suspect.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's an actual asset. And that's not to say there's something wrong with kind of the more personal brand type business. Hey, if you love what you do and you built something that helps you keep doing that, awesome. But it's also good to have diversified assets.
So many people get into whatever kind of business they're in because they're passionate about it. And then a few years go by, and because they're doing it by themselves and they never get a break, it becomes a grind. And the reason most people start something is the passion. But in having something become a grind, you lose the passion, then you might as well work for someone else.
That is something about which I am extremely passionate because I've seen it happen a lot. I've talked to a lot of people who have quit the job and tried to make things work, and it didn't pan out, and they got burned out, they lost the passion, and then kind of went back to square one. And I so desperately don't want people to lose their passion. And so I started having conversations with people over the course of 3 or 4 years, 300 conversations with people, most of them in person at events, meetups, conferences, trying to figure out what is it that is keeping you stuck? What are the struggles that you have? Because I had started writing a book trying to solve this problem, and I realized I was just writing a book that I wanted to write, but not the book that people needed to read. So I scrapped that 20,000 word manuscript and I just went back to the drawing board. I spent 3 years talking to people. What is it that really keeps you stuck? And so then I rewrote the book. And the solution I've found in thinking through this and talking to hundreds of people is what I call overlap, which is where you keep the job to pay the bills, while you build up something on the side, and you make sure that it's sustainable. You make sure that you're actually able to make money from it before you make that leap. Build up a little bit of savings, get your family on board, communicate with people. And that's been something that's really like a foundation for me, is helping people avoid killing that passion by making sure you've got something really solid here. I think of it like planting a small tree. You got this little sapling. Usually you want to put a fence around that so, animals don't destroy it or the lawnmower doesn't go over it. And you don't want to put your weight on this tree when it's only been growing for a few months, because it'll just snap. It's not like a large oak that after a hard day's work you can lean against with a glass of lemonade. So until it's sustainable, you don't want to lean on it. And so what I've found is people are prematurely leaning on their passion for finances, right? They're trying to make money from this. They're trying to transact on it instead of giving themselves some space. Just carve out some space to explore and to try and let this thing grow organically.
That is the best way I've ever heard that explained. I talk with a lot of, young entrepreneurs and people who are thinking about starting their job because they know that I've done it, and I speak about it and I talk about it and really encourage people, if you have a passion and you want to start a business, don't get your MBA first and put your business plan first. Just jump in and do it, because those things are nice to haves. They're not have to haves. And if I can do it, anyone can do it, which I say quite a bit. However, the mistake that I hear people do all the time is they turn their side hustle into their all the time hustle way too soon. And if you can work for someone who will pay your benefits, pay your insurance, put some money in a 401k, well, you have space to practice your side hustle, to see if you've got something that can grow. Then take advantage of that. I've never heard the sapling described that way before, but I'm going to use it, and I will credit you for it. But I love that concept because it becomes visual and tangible, and it makes so much sense. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just described it's the fastest way to turn a passion into a job. That's what we don't want. So support the passion, support it by covering your bills some other way at first before you try and because it just leads to scarcity mindset and desperation. You start working with people that are going to walk all over you and not pay your invoices on time. And you knew it wasn't going to be a good fit, but you got to make ends meet. You don't want that.
And then after a few years, you need a sabbatical to get your brain cleared up, and you get in this low burnout, and it's this bad cycle. So you're also working on a book, correct, about sabbatical to spread the sabbatical message. Is that part of your passion and part of the future of the sabbatical mindset?
Absolutely. So I'm working on a book. It's called Sabbatical Book. And this is to help people, whether they run businesses and they're thinking about whether they should give their employees sabbaticals, or you're just a freelancer. Maybe you're working on your own and you're thinking about taking sabbaticals for yourself. You control your schedule. You have that kind of a flexibility. Or you're someone who works in a job, in which case we talked about the weekend sabbatical, where you just carve out a little bit of space for yourself to get some of the benefits of this. I'm really, really passionate about it, but also, like I said, very tactical. So I want to give kind of this guidebook, this handbook that can help people take a sabbatical that will actually recharge them, that will actually be restful, avoiding all of the mistakes I made in my first couple of years of sabbaticals that weren't recharging for me. And also be the thing that an employer who wants to integrate sabbaticals into their organization can give this book to their employees as a handbook, as a guide. Because it sounds so simple, like just don't work, right? Just take time off. What more is there to it? But you'd be surprised. There's a decent amount to it. So I just want people to avoid the headaches and the mistakes. And how do you manage your energy? How do you get ready beforehand? How do you come back afterward? All of those things.
Well, I think it's coming out too late for me. So I'm glad we had the conversation because you've given me a lot of things to think about, which I really appreciate. And I'm with you. I'm writing this pre-sabbatical kind of blog, and then the post-sabbatical. Here's what I think I'm going to learn from this, and here's what I actually learned from it. And I'm really fascinated to see what ends up happening, because if you live in this if I really can do what I'm going to do, the month of moment concept, I have no idea what's going to come out of that in 30 days. So that's the fun of the adventure and the journey and just seeing what can happen, which is not how I live my life.
I'm so excited for you. Like, this is going to be so great.
So, final question of the podcast. Is there a quote or song that motivated you to flip your script?
Something that changed my life was just a single phrase. And I don't know if it'll make sense to anyone else necessarily, but it was this. It was from a friend in a mastermind group. We're all entrepreneurs. And he told me, you have to earn the right to play the long game. And I'd never heard anyone tell me that. And as a person who tends to think long-term naturally, which I think is not so common, most of the advice we hear is, oh, think about tomorrow, think about the long term, don't just make decisions for today. And I never had trouble with that. I was always long term. My head is 5 years from now. I'd be talking to my wife about something I want to do and she's freaking out. And I'm like, no, I'm talking about like 5 years from now, not right now. But the problem was I was so up in the clouds with things. I wasn't taking care of my business and covering short-term expenses and making sure things were covered. And so he was saying, look, the long game's great, but if you're not around anymore, none of the investment you're making right now is going to pan out. You have to earn the right to play the long game. And you do that by covering your short-term expenses. So just that was, for me, it was a big deal. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else, but that really helped me.
I haven't heard that before, and it does resonate. That makes a lot of sense. It's just like the tree. It doesn't go from sapling to large oak or sequoia overnight. There are a lot of steps that you really have to take to get there. And the sabbatical concept is to make sure that you're providing the protection for it so that it can grow. So it's the long game. Protect. You got to earn the right to the long game. I really like that. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for putting it out there on the internet so I could find it and find a sabbatical expert in the business world, because there aren't that many out there. And I really look forward to seeing how your journey progresses in the book, and continued good health for your wife.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
We'll put links to the different websites that Sean talked about on the Flip Your Script podcast website. And what really stuck out to me is carving out space and freedom from obligation. There's a big difference between filling up your calendar with fun things and filling up your calendar with nothing to see what fun things will happen. That is such an interesting, total flip your script way to look at time, and to allow the opportunity to say yes in the moment. What can be learned when there isn't busyness? I don't know, but when I'm back from sabbatical, I will let you know. My hope is that Sean's story empowers you to believe you're capable of more than you think, to discover motivation, to uncover inspiration, and to find the strength to turn the page.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Script, hosted by Kristi Peel and produced by Media Minefield. If you like our message, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share our episodes with your family and friends. Do you or someone you know have a story about flipping your script? We'd love to share it. Contact us on our website, flipyourscriptpodcast.com. To stay up to date on all things Flip Your Script, make sure to follow host Kristi Peel on social media. You can also check out the website for pictures, resources mentioned in the show, and other great episodes.